whatever you're using to avoid like the issue, it will catch up with you, and I mean that instant gratification or instant comfort or whatever, is going to be short-lived. And it's only a matter of time before like that runs out, before that keeps working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, these stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. Well, hello, I Have 12 Questions community. Our guest today is one that I have just been so excited about. We've known each other for years from being in the same sober circles, and she inspires me so much on so many different levels. And her name is Monica. And she's just a very interesting person all around, but she's a lifelong mariachi musician, former K through 12 and university instructor, and potentially seeking a career out as a substance abuse counselor, but also like looking at other options, like a therapist specializing in addiction recovery. So we'll kind of get more into that in the interview. But I would like to welcome you, first of all, and just say hello, Monica.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for making new space since the first couple of times we didn't get connected online. But I'm so happy to be here. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time as well. And it's just a pleasure to know you in person. And likewise, you've inspired me from day one since I joined the sober community. And I'm just always grateful for you and what you've contributed to my sobriety, whether you know it or not.
Oh, my God. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been excited about this for a while and also nervous about it because we're going to be talking about grieving. And
me too.
So not really, it's Friday. It's a beautiful day. I'm not really in the mood to cry and revisit heavy shit. But at the same time, like that is part of our current experience. And so obviously, that's what's going to come up. And then, we had technical difficulties the first time and something happened the second time. And so this is like third time's a charm. But I believe things happen when they're supposed to. And for whatever reason, this was the time for this conversation to happen. And both of us always, are wanting to just, hopefully it helps people. That's the main point. So before shit gets heavy, let's start with an icebreaker. Like if you had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh, I think anything by 80s Madonna. Like I love The Day. I love, you know what? Like any type of song that's going to make me happy. Because I think that that's like the power of music in general, to really stir emotions that we may express or not otherwise.
Yeah.
But there's something about 80s Madonna. I've always loved her, and I've like, if there's any period of music where I thought that she was like really on top of it. And the music spoke to me in a fun way, in a carefree way, that would be it. So yeah, like Holiday, Think of Me, any of her greatest hits from the 80s. And Holiday is a good one because I think that's all about, taking time out from the drudgery of life, and just saying, like, let's take a minute to come together and just have fun and be carefree, and enjoy ourselves, remind ourselves that life is to be enjoyed. And, as we'll get on in the conversation, I think that, life throws us things where we're like, hey, like, I'm not having fun right now.
Yeah.
But we always have to remember that there's a flip side to that too.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Much to my mom's chagrin, Madonna was that literal icon of like, that's all I want to be. This is all I care about. Her lyrics, the way she dresses, the way she speaks truth to power, the way she stands up for women and all people really way before her time. But that Holiday, every time it comes on, there's just like, right when you hear it start, you just feel festive. And it is this reminder of like, oh yeah, why am I not having fun? Why am I not trying to see the good in everything? And the outfit she wore too when she
Oh my gosh, they're the best. And I'm telling you, like, 80s Madonna was the best. Like
the best. So I have the privilege of knowing parts of your story just because I've sat in the rooms with you, for several years and heard your shares, and you were always so raw and so honest. So I know a lot more than our guests do, obviously, but can you kind of share with us just like what prompted your path into sobriety?
Sure. And the reason that I wanted to share that I'm a mariachi musician, like, from the start, is because as wonderful as the mariachi community is, and as much joy that the music brings to people, and as much fun it is to play it, and so many great friendships come out of it. I mean, I have like one friend that's probably not a musician, like from a space and time, but there's also like this dark underbelly, where alcoholism and drug use is pervasive in the mariachi community. And so I grew up around mariachi music. My dad is a mariachi musician, and he had a restaurant that featured his group. And so I've been around the music, but also around like the scene, the whole scene, right? Since I was born. And of course, like I said, there are so many good things about it. And I mean, that's why my dad got into it. He's not of Mexican descent, he's of Swedish descent. And but there was something so captivating about the music that he decided to dedicate his entire life to it. And my mom was of Mexican descent and loved mariachi music, even though it wasn't like, the popular music, I guess, when she was, young, or like in her social circles or whatever. But she loved it, and, she didn't care if other people liked it. That was what she liked. And so I thought that my parents had a really good relationship, because they found like a common ground, even if my mom wasn't a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Her love for the music really matched my dad's. And so, like I said, I grew up around the music. I grew up around the whole scene, and knew, all of these musicians from the time that I was a little girl. And I started learning mariachi music when my dad started a student program in Washington State. We moved from Los Angeles when I was 10. My dad sold his restaurant and he became a bilingual teacher in Washington State. And alongside that, started a student mariachi. And so that's really where I, you know, developed a new appreciation for the group for the music, because I was part of a group and I was making the music, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I wasn't just a spectator anymore, a listener anymore. I didn't have a passive role. I had an active role. And so anyway, by the time I graduated from high school, I knew that I wanted to become a professional mariachi musician. And my dad had never really, I'm sure, like in retrospect, he really tried to protect me from seeing the darker side of the mariachi world as I was growing up. And I now understand his reservations about me becoming a professional mariachi musician, because he knew of all the pitfalls and kind of dangers that go along with it. And if you don't have a good head on your shoulders, or you're just more susceptible to peer influence and wanting to fit in, which is me. You can, I mean, your life can unravel pretty quickly. So I was 18 when I moved back to LA, and I started college, and I started playing with this group. And when I'm new to a circle, new to a place, I'm pretty reserved. I could even say that for when I first went to when I first got to the rooms, I didn't want to share. Like my
Yeah.
palms would sweat, and I was like,
I remember.
nobody look. I'm just here to listen. And I remember my sponsor really struggled to get me to share in the beginning, because it was so scary to me. I just don't like to be vulnerable, or don't like to be in an unfamiliar space. And so that was the same thing when I first got into the group, and I'm around these new people, and they're like musicians that I've always admired and respected, and I want them to like me, and I want them to accept me, not only on a musical level, but on a social level. I just kind of saw like what they did, and everyone drank, and I had never drank before. And so, a few months after turning 18, I'm in LA with no parental supervision, kind of dipping my toes into early adulthood, and I can do what I want, and nobody's going to know what I'm really up to.
Right.
And so I started drinking, but I can remember very early on, like, hey, like, I don't drink like everyone else. Like, and it's so weird. Like, it was maybe the second time that I drank that I had my first blackout.
Mm.
And, but nobody talked about those things. Right.
Right.
And nobody talked to me about like, hey, like, maybe slow down, or like, this is how you should drink. And I'm not blaming anyone for not teaching me how to drink. It's just once I started drinking, it was like I couldn't stop, and I wanted more and more and more and more. And of course came all the consequences that we as alcoholics know, spending money that you don't have or that's allotted for something else. Driving on the freeway with one eye open and just, hoping that you make it. And I did so many times. And like I said, that's what everyone else did. So I didn't know that that was like a no-no, or, it just wasn't socially unacceptable in my circle. Hey, like, I've had a good time. I'm done. Like, or the place is closing. I got to get home, and the end. And everyone would just drive home. And I mean, that caught up with me, later, with a DUI and all of those consequences. But, it was just like, all the things that I would do and say, like when I was in a blackout. And I'm talking about like, I mean, I know some people who are like, oh yeah, I blacked out for like a half an hour, but then, I was good. And, No, I would black out for like 5 or 6 hours thinking I was asleep. And then people tell me the next day, oh, you did this, or you said this, or you got kicked out of here, or whatever. Like things that I never imagined myself saying or doing. But I had also built a pretty solid reputation for myself as a party girl, as a drunk in the mariachi world, and everyone knew me as that. And so all of those things really, like from the get-go, started eating away at my soul, because I really felt that I was engaging in a lot of behavior that didn't go along with my innate value system, like the value system or the person that I had known myself to be up until the point that I started drinking. But it was like a vicious cycle, because I'm like, well, if everyone already thinks this of me, and everyone has already seen me behave this way and thinks and knows that I'm this or that, I mean, why change things? I mean,
Right.
people aren't going to change their perceptions of me. So why should I make any effort to even try to change their perceptions? And it was always about someone else, like what everyone else thought about me. And it wasn't like what I think about me. Of course, I felt really ashamed and embarrassed for what I had become, for who I had become. But I wasn't thinking, hey, maybe I should make a change so that I can feel better about myself, so that I can show myself that I really am who I thought I was all those years
Right.
before I started drinking. So anyway, like I said, it was 18 when I started drinking, and I got to 35. And, at that point, I moved to Austin when I was 35. Like I had just turned 35 when I moved to Austin. And, I didn't have any friends there, or like any party friends, certainly. Like if I wanted a party, I'd have to travel at least 4 or 5 hours to a different part of Texas to meet up with those mariachi friends that I had made. And that's what we did, so getting to Austin and putting a little bit of distance between myself and like the whole party scene, I think was good for me. I wasn't drinking as frequently, and I was never like, let me have a beer after work or a glass of wine with dinner. It was always like, drinking is an event, it's an occasion, and it's friends. It's totally social. And I wasn't ever like the type to say, like, let me hit up a bar by myself and see who I meet there and make friends that way. So really being in Austin and, like I said, kind of isolating myself from that scene, I think was helpful to, whether I realized it in the moment or not, to start reflecting a little more deeply, right? And saying like, well, okay, is this really how I want to live out my life? And it was a weekend in April that I came back to LA for a celebration. The celebration was on a Thursday, but I made the celebration until Monday, like it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like it's a whole weekend event. And, I missed work at my new job. I had just started at the university that fall semester. And so April, I'm barely into my second semester. And here I am like, hey, I'm not going to make it, on a Monday, or for whatever responsibilities I had there, because I was still in LA, kind of nursing this moral hangover at LAX, waiting for my flight to get back to Austin and then just deal with like the aftermath.
Right.
And I don't know what it was about that particular time that I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, I was sitting in LAX, with a twice or three time delayed flight. And I was just looking at everyone, and there were families there and couples and, just people living life like a normal Monday afternoon. And I'm here like sitting in a chair at the gate because I don't know what else to do with myself. I walked around and got a sandwich and just, there was just something on my mind and on my heart. And I was like, all these people are living their lives like it's a normal Monday afternoon. And I'm here with, hi, I'm hungover, like written all over my face, probably, or at least that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I've been drunk for the past 4 days. And I just felt this is really not normal and this is really not okay. Like, what are you doing with your life, Monica? And I thought of all the things that I had. I had bought a house and I had a new SUV and I had this great job and I had all of this stuff. And I've shared everything on the outside looked good, but everything on the inside was a shit show.
Yeah.
Like a shit show on repeat. And it was like, what's it going to take, Monica? And, there was no DUI. There was no getting kicked out of anywhere. There was no, all of these other things, no getting into a fight with, your friends from 20 years or whatever, or going home with a stranger. Or there was none of that, like extra chaos that had accompanied so many drunken nights. But it was just like, I cannot do this anymore. And I couldn't shake that feeling. I went to work the next day and I was just like, I want to jump out of my skin. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I feel like all of my students can see like that I'm a fuck up, that I'm just like this phony baloney. Like, I'm really a drunk and I'm not, a respectable professor and I'm not worthy of even having this job. And I'm not, all of these things.
Yeah.
And that was Tuesday and I went home and I just, I cried. And, that night I was lying in my bed and I just yelled out like, God, if you're real, help me help myself because I can't do this anymore. And I've always been spiritual. My mom kind of tried to instill some things. We weren't a religious family by any means, but I kind of, always prayed to God, like when something was going haywire or I really needed to get out of a jam or, give thanks, when everything's going great, but to really like cultivate like an honest, relationship with God or to like even seek out a God, like that was never part of my, life story. So I was like, if you're real though, like if you're real, help me because I can't do this anymore. And, so I found a women's meeting there in Austin that met on Wednesdays. And I was like, there's going to be nothing that stops me from going to that meeting. And let me tell you that I am the first person to bail on myself. Like, I do not hold myself to any commitments that I make for myself. I'm slightly better at committing to other people, maybe because that's embarrassing to leave people hanging. But even that needs work. But like to myself, like I'm always the first to flake out on myself. And so I remember driving to that meeting and I was like, maybe I should just turn the car around. Maybe I'm just exaggerating. Like this moral hangover will wear off and you'll be fine by the weekend. And I was like, no, I told myself that I was going to go. And I even got there early. I got there by like 6:30 and the meeting started at 7. And I was just sitting in the parking lot like, okay, like what time should I go in? Like what, and who's going to be on the other side of that door? And I was just so nervous for it. But I can tell you, even with everything that's happened since that first meeting, that was the best decision that I've ever made for myself in my entire life. And recovery has not been easy. I think that I like when things are new, they're exciting because there's a lot of unknown and what am I going to learn and who am I going to see? And oh, okay, I get to read this. I have little assignments and it feels like I'm like checking off all these boxes and I'm being productive. And I
Yep.
like that. And
Yep.
somebody else is telling me what to do. I don't have to figure it out on my own. There's somebody to hold my hand through the beginning stages of it. As time has gone on, that hasn't been the case. And
Yeah.
so yeah, like I remember people sharing, like, I really didn't want to come to the meeting tonight, but I felt that I should because whatever. And I was like, I would sit there thinking in the beginning, why wouldn't they want to come to the meeting? This is like the best part of my week. And, I'm so excited for Wednesdays or Fridays or Mondays or whatever. And yeah, like the novelty wears off and you're like, oh shit, like I really don't want to go. Like I'm tired. Suddenly this thing that you had all the time in the world for like becomes this nuisance that's getting in the way of the rest of your life. And so, I mean, that's regardless of how I feel about um, working a program and how frequently I make meetings nowadays and how hard I'm working a program right now. I can still say that, that day that I walked into those rooms was the most important decision that I have ever made in my life.
Yeah.
No, job acceptance or, choosing whatever college I was going to go to or, what profession I was going to go into or, nothing. It has been more important and life-saving and life-restoring than walking into those rooms.
That's
And
beautiful.
yeah, I'm just, I'll always be grateful for that first meeting and I'll always remember it so clearly because I think that it was the first time, I don't know, maybe even ever, where there was no doubt in my mind that I was in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You can feel it. You can just,
yeah,
something weird happens. And I know exactly what you mean.
something weird. And, like so many people, especially my mariachi friends or colleagues, have asked me, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you stay sober in this space when people are buying us drinks and people are, there's alcohol all the time.
Yep.
And it's just it's almost like part of your job, to party. And I go, you know what? At first, it was hard, and it wasn't because I was tempted to drink. Like, it didn't ever feel like that. Like, oh man, like I wish I could be, I wish that could be me too. In the beginning, it was just kind of like I just needed a break from that scene. Like, if the party started getting too party, I'm like, okay, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Now, I stay up with everyone and I hang out with everyone and I don't drink and everyone else does. And I'm just, I'm still having a good time and I'm still enjoying my friends' company. It's also made me realize that, whoa, yeah, nobody drinks the way that I drink because whereas like sometimes these gatherings go pretty late into the night or pretty early into the next morning, like I'm 4, 5, 6 a.m. and I'm still there, like, hey guys, can I get anyone anything? And there's nobody who's like in another dimension or on another planet or who doesn't know who they are anymore, or where they are or what they're saying. And I'm like, oh shit, like I really had a problem because like at this point, like I was like unrecognizable, and
Yeah.
in a blackout scene and doing God knows what, but I'm like, yeah, like people don't get drunk like how I used to get drunk. So that's been kind of like an interesting, like, realization through seeing how other people drink and, they drink a lot, but there's no transformation there. And I was a transformer. So anyway, but I mean, I think that as I've gone on in sobriety and like I've had to deal with some pretty like shitty things, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years. There have been moments where, and I'll be honest, the day before my 40th birthday, which was in July, I was at the restaurant where I work in the little break room, and I was like this close. I know the listeners can't see my fingers, but they're like, touching. I was this close to saying, fuck this shit, fuck everyone, fuck everything, fuck my sobriety, fuck, like, I had just had it. It was just like so much emotional buildup that I was like, the only thing I want right now is a drink. And, a couple of my friends were there and they're drinkers. I mean, drinkers, but they were like, Monica, like, don't do it. Like, you wouldn't be doing it for the right reasons. You're not celebrating anything. It's not for you to just like join in on the fun or whatever.
Right.
It's what I used alcohol for as an escape, right? I just wanted to escape my reality. And I'm really grateful for those friends who, even though they're not sober, like, they recognize that sober me is better than drunk me.
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't want to do that to yourself.
Yeah.
And, that in the 4 slightly plus years of sobriety that I have, that was the closest that I've ever come to just being like, you know what? Fuck everything. Like, I don't care about anything right now, except for not feeling how I do right now.
Right.
And, that was pretty scary. So, sobriety has peaks and valleys. And, I know that I've talked to you about this in outside conversations that we've had. But at first I didn't know what it meant to be a dry drunk. And, like, you're spiritually drunk. And I feel like there have been a series of events or people or whatever that have just sort of come in succession over the last 2 years that have really led me to be kind of treading that line of like emotional drunk. And, it's taken me away from my program. I mean, not completely. I mean, it's there. And that's why I don't, it's interesting. Working a program and being sober obviously go hand in hand, right? And I think that we find ourselves in a better place to handle, life's challenges, the more in tune we are with a program. But like I said, I think that there have been a lot of things, a lot of moving around, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, that have really kept me from engaging like 1,000% or even 50% in a program over the last couple of years. And it's been a lot of like starts and stops. But I feel like solid enough, like what I just said, that this has been the best decision that I've ever made in my life, because it's saved my life. And no matter how like my program looks, or doesn't look, I know that that's temporary, but
Right.
that like the foundation is solid, and that I'm not going to, it's just something that I can't do. Like being drunk is something that can never be me ever again, because I know what's waiting on the other side of that. I know, and I imagine that with the things that I've gone through as a sober person, if I added alcohol into that, I'd be seeing them from a distorted lens.
Yeah.
And the shit that would come with that as I realize everything as a drunk, um, I don't even know I don't even want to know where that would take me.
Yeah.
You know, I just
Plus,
rather not know.
you can't process any of the stuff that's happening when we're drinking. Like we're literally numbing that whole part of ourselves. So all we're doing is delaying the inevitable of eventually having to deal with that trauma or that grief or that resentment or whatever it is. It's not like drinking is going to fix it or make it go away. It just now it's going to fester. And then when we do get back around to addressing it, it's going to be gnarlier than it was. But also, I think hearing you talk about the ebbs and flows and the peaks and valleys of your program, isn't that just life? I mean, really, it is. Whether you're in like a relationship or with your career or whatever, like, do you love it all the time and give 100% all the time? Of course not. And in a marriage or your career or whatever, it's like there are days where like this is the best thing ever, and other days where like, why did I get married or why did I take this job? Like you can't be
Wait,
on all the time. And we always say progress, not perfection, which sounds great in theory, but I think we're wired to where it's kind of this all or nothing. I'm either fully entrenched in my program or I'm just not working a program. And that really isn't realistic, right? Like we are all on some spectrum of whatever. And
yeah,
so,
like in between.
yeah,
Yeah, really, I am a very all or nothing person. I mean,
me too.
oh, I it's not that I don't like that about myself, but I mean, sometimes I don't, sometimes I wish that I could just do, and it's like for everything. Like, if I'm not going to put together all the furniture that I've purchased from IKEA together in one day, then I'm not going to put any of it together. And the boxes are just going to sit in the living room until I can do all of it.
Right.
Well, I mean, is that realistic? Like, do you have like 14 hours to spend, like just putting together one shelf after another, like come on, Monica. But like I feel like that's like the perfect analogy for my life. Like if I can't do the whole task, I'm not like a person that, okay, let me do a little bit, then let me move on to something else and then come back to this other thing. It's like I want to exhaust myself because I need to do like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if I can't do the whole thing, then none of it's going to get done. And and it's the same thing like for a program, like, oh my gosh, like if I can only go to one meeting like that, then I might as well go to no meetings this week, because one isn't good enough. I need to go to at least three. And I don't know where that's like, maybe like past sponsors have recommended, like, hey, I think you should go to at least three meetings because we're here. And it's like, if I can't go, or if I can't go to the same one, like I'm bent on, I need to find a home group and I need to find a sponsor. And if I'm not going to the same one, then I'm not going to get to know the people there and I'm not going to accomplish that other goal,
Right. Right.
It's like, okay, well, maybe right now you just go to a bunch of different meetings and, just sit there and listen and just engage in something, right? Or just read the daily reflection. Maybe don't do a 10-step, but read the daily reflection.
Right.
Even if you don't write about it, but just sit with it or whatever, And it's like, those are all things that I've been wanting to do, and I will do like very sporadically, And then it's like, well, 3 weeks later, like, let me do one other little thing. But it's like, hey, like, low like, lower the bar for yourself,
Right.
and I think that's very hard for people who are all or nothing to do
Yeah.
sometimes.
And that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I've just, over the last few years, I mean, I'll have 10 years in December. And like you said, the monotony sets in, and you're like, I'm outgrowing certain parts of this program. I need something more expansive. I feel safe here, but I also want to check this out and I want to check that out. But I was like, no, if you step away from this exact recipe, you're totally going to relapse. And all this like fear based, like,
Yeah.
I have to have 4 meetings a week. I have to have 3 sponsors at least, sponsees. I have to, and it's like, based on what, I'm going to do what works for me. And now when you're new, yes, that structure was really important for me. I really needed, like, someone please tell me what to do. Oh my God.
Yes.
But at some point, I have to stay open minded enough. And I met all these people who've gotten sober all these different ways, and they all do it in all these different, and it works for them. And it may not be the definition of sobriety that AA mandates, but AA is not the only show in town. So, like, if you're sober and you're able to show up as a better person, then, like, cool, I want to hear about it. And I've been interviewed people from just all these different versions of recovery, and it's been really eye-opening, and it's given me that, to be easy on myself, to give myself permission to, like, not be so rigid and not be so, like, all or nothing, and all this fear of, like, if I don't do it exactly as I was taught, then I'm doomed. That is not true. That's not true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a way that I think it's a way that our disease fucks with us, right? It's a way to keep us out of solution, because if I can act on that fear, I'm gonna get further and further away from things that are good for me. If I want to isolate, my ass needs to be in a meeting, period, right? And whether it's online or it's a yoga class or I'm on a hike with my dogs, maybe that's my meeting for the day. But whatever it is, it's not what I'm doing, which is sitting at home thinking about myself and being miserable.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
So sometimes
Well,
it's
yeah.
hard, because I feel like we almost get trained early on, almost like militant. Like, and it's hard to break away from that. And some people, if they do go away from that, maybe they will relapse. And I know what my signs are. So if I get too far away and I start feeling all wonky, then I know that I need to get back to what I know works. But that doesn't mean I can't also be experimenting with other expansive things, I guess. Right? Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I have felt like, okay, I need to do something, like, I need to go to a meeting, or I need to, something familiar, right? Something that I know will sort of ground me in any form of a program, that I can come up with. And like you said, it doesn't have to be like this AA way. Like, what is the AA way? Like, and I think that maybe it is a little confusing, because at the beginning it is so structured, and you have somebody telling you exactly what to do and how to do it. And then, as time goes on, like, the grip sort of eases up, and you're sort of more free to, well, depending on your sponsor, but
Yeah.
depending on, like, what continues to unfold. But like, sometimes I just feel like, oh shoot, like, I kind of want, like, a little bit of that hand holding, and somebody kind of to be cracking the whip on me, because I'm not strong enough to, hold this up right now, and I need somebody to be on me.
Yeah. Well, how do you know when you're off the beam? Like, what's one telltale sign when you can tell, when your warning light on your dashboard? What is that for you?
I stopped showing up for people, like, totally. I know that that's like, it's easy for me to flake on people. It's easy for me to cancel plans. It's easy for me to just stay holed up in my house. My house is a mess. Um, if my house is in disarray, and I'm not talking about, little, threw my purse on the couch or whatever. Like, no, if there's shit everywhere
Yeah.
and the laundry isn't put away, which it's not right now. I just keep washing and filling up baskets, but like the baskets never get folded and, put away and stuff. Like little things like that. My eating is way off. Like, I just eat snacks and I don't eat food, or I, yeah, I just have a hard time taking myself out of my house.
Yeah.
When I start to get like holed up in my house, I don't answer the phone, I don't answer texts, I just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, something is way off. But like, um, yeah, just not showing up for people,
Yeah.
especially when I say that I will,
Yeah.
is a big one for me. And that's something that I really tried, especially, earlier on in my sober journey to correct, because it's like, hey, if you commit to something, if you commit to someone, like, you've got to show up. And it doesn't even have to be someone. Commit to showing up to a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's an online one.
Yeah.
And, like these past few months, it's like I haven't been able to commit to anything. Like, don't make plans with me, don't ahead of time. Like, don't count on me. I just feel really incapable of being there for someone else right now. Like, my mind is going in like 50 different directions. And it's almost like, I don't even have like the capacity to like slow my mind down to just
Yeah.
be like, okay, Monica, all you have to do is put your right foot in front of the left foot right now,
Right. Yeah.
you know? Um, and it's been a lot of things, obviously, about a year ago, we got the diagnosis for my mom, who had, the time of diagnosis, we didn't realize that it was that serious, but it ended up being stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma, which is bile duct cancer. And the 3 most probable causes of it are excessive alcohol, inactivity, and being overweight. And my mom was all 3 of those. And so, they did what they could. She got the best care, but she left us really fast. She was diagnosed at the end of August and passed away on December 3rd of 2022. So I went to Mexico, where my parents have a second home. They built a second home there, and that's where my mom was receiving her care. And I went on November 5th, which happened to be my dad's 75th birthday. And, it was like bittersweet, because you think like, oh, this is a milestone birthday, we're going to have a big party and, whatever. And it was just like, I got him like a package of those like cupcakes from the drugstore, and put a candle in that. And that was our birthday celebration. And my mom, she was bedridden by that point. And 4 weeks later, she was gone. So definitely having to sort of reconcile the diagnosis and then like the speed in which she, passed away, and then the aftermath. Like, there have been unprecedented feelings that have come up with that. At the same time, I found out that my contract wasn't going to be renewed for this school year, this school year that just started at UT. And anyway, that's like a separate story. And, there are a lot of reasons where I could have like a lot of resentment. And I did, for a little bit of time, but I just kind of let it go. Hey, it wasn't for me. But I ended up resigning my position even before my contract was up because somebody at work was just making my life miserable. And I was like, you know what? My mom just passed away like 6 weeks ago. I don't need this shit,
Yeah.
Go take a flying leap. And, like, that, anyway, maybe I still have a little resentment over it. I don't know. But, anyway, it's just like the way that things were supposed to work out in the moment. And honestly, like, I know like my mom is watching over me and I know she had a hand in moving the pieces so that I could come home. With the timing of the sale of my house and finding out that I wasn't going to work at UT any longer. And, the ability to make a move like the one that I did back to California where I had always wanted to be. But I was always moving for this job or that job or school or whatever. And the opportunity never arose. So I'm just really grateful to be back here. Like I said, I'm living in a smaller space. It's not my house, I'm renting a house. And there are certain things that I don't have that, I don't have health insurance. I don't have, maybe as much financial stability as I did when I was working at the university or, another teaching job. But I've also come to realize that I don't want to be a teacher. It's too much sacrifice. Like at the cost of like my sanity, like, do I really feel good and at peace? Like you said, not every day we're going to enjoy our job. Right. But when there's kind of like this feeling of dread, like every day that you go to it, even if you have a great day, but at the end of the day, you're like, oh shit, like I got to do this again tomorrow. Like, okay, like I got through today and it was pretty good, but like, do I really am I really excited about this? I never felt that way with teaching. And so I'm like, hey, like here's this opportunity, this kind of window for me to just chill and get back into the music that I love. And build my own musical skills. But also like have like the time and space to figure out what my next career move is going to be. And it's going to be like something that I decide like 100% on my own, not something that's sort of been chosen for me or like, hey, you should, or suggested, you should do this. No, like now it's like I get to choose. And so, from like, and then of course, like I said, unprecedented feelings. I mean, that was like my job, dealing like with the loss of my mom, but also dealing with like how my dad is dealing with all of this, which is kind of like not dealing with it. And, seeking companionship in another woman, like, a couple months after my mom passed away. And that's been like a huge pill for me to swallow. Because I'm like, you guys were together for 50 years, your entire adult lives. And like, I get it. Like, you don't want to be alone. I don't want you to feel lonely or unhappy, but hey, like, yeah, you lost your partner, but like, that's also my mom. And like, I feel like there wasn't a period of like respect for that loss and that space before my dad started engaging in a relationship with someone else. And so talk about like resentment, and not knowing what to do with those feelings. And then, of course, like my own personal relationships, like I have a healthy pattern of of engaging with emotionally unavailable people.
What?
Um,
Me too. Oh my God.
and yeah, and people that demand that their needs be met, but have no regards for what my needs and wants are in a
Mhm.
relationship. And like I spend a lot of time and energy trying to convince people of my worth and like why they should want to be with me. And I have no boundaries. And I mean, that's something that I was working on like a little bit with my therapist over, the past 2 years that I was working with her before I moved back to California. But it's like also realizing that I feel like I don't have boundaries because people are just going to do whatever they want anyway. And so it's easier for me to accept their unacceptable behavior, um, and make sure they're still there, than to put up a boundary and risk losing them. And that goes for my dad, and I at first I went really hard with him too. And I'm like, how could you be doing this? And blah, 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 and I really flew off the handle over that one. And, he's just going to do what he's going to do anyway. And I'm like, okay, so if I want to have a relationship with my dad, and I want to keep him in my life, like then I've got to lower that boundary or just be the first one to be in acceptance over his feelings,
Yeah.
and put mine secondary. And I feel like that's what I do in romantic relationships as well.
Yeah.
And I've been in this situation that's been off and on, off and on, off and on, for over 2 years. And it's like I feel like I muster up like enough strength and courage to walk away from it all, and then like I relent again. And it's a lot of that. I know it's all based in fear,
Mhm.
like, but if I don't have, it's fear of the pain that's going to accompany that kind of loss
Yeah.
that I don't want to feel, because I know that I feel it hard with all relationships that come to an end. um it's the fear that, oh my gosh, like time is running out. Like, am I ever going to find like my person? And I've been, single for a really, really, really long time. And I know that I'm okay by myself.
Yeah.
And I do well and I actually thrive and I feel good. And um but I also know that there's a big void there
Mhm.
that I'm trying to fill. And so because um, because of that void, I think I just tend to fill it up with whatever,
Yeah.
and yeah, like accept the unacceptable. And like I've really been reflecting on it lately. Like for a long time, I've known like, oh, sorry, that
Oh.
this is not what I want. Stop.
I have dogs.
um,
I get it.
yeah, I think they heard something at the front door outside. I think there's somebody raking outside. Anyway, for I don't want the situation that I'm in to be a forever situation.
Yeah.
Um, it's not it's not good for me,
Yeah.
and I know that that's, as if it hasn't been hard enough, that's also been a contributing factor of me shutting down,
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, like this relationship, whatever it is like, um, and it's been like that with all of my relationships,
Yeah.
since the very first one, it's like an addiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
and And so, like, I recognize a lot of my drunk self and a lot of behaviors that I exhibit when I'm not sober. They've kind of come up now, and manifest themselves in the same way around a different situation,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
That's what the step work is for. That's what the
mhm,
nightlies are. It's all, I mean, it's not going to fix us or whatever, but it will illuminate patterns so that
totally
we can make different choices. But unfortunately, just like addiction to chemicals, like unfortunately that misery, because it's familiar, feels comfortable. And that's
right.
just so weird. But, and then eventually we do get sick and tired of being sick and tired. So we stop doing that. We go try this other thing. And then we're like, God, I should have done this sooner. Right. But the transition to that new thing is the most terrifying, because of all the fear and also the lack of control. Because like we get taught over and over, you cannot control people, places, and things. What that person's doing is none of your business. Focus on your own program, focus on your own shit, like handle your own business. But it's hard to do because if I'm gonna open myself up and I have no control over this person's behavior, that means that I can get hurt. I am vulnerable, and that is not a fun place to be. And so,
Exactly.
or going back to relationships with parents and seeking that validation or love or approval that we didn't feel like we got at certain parts of our childhood. Now we're trying to fulfill that later. And I don't know about you, but like losing my pop, because we were going through all of that literally at the same time, you and I, with
Mhm.
you with your mom and me with my dad. And Paige reached out and was like, "Hey, can you reach out to Monica? Like she's going through something similar." And I remember my first reaction was like, the last thing I want to be doing right now is helping anyone else, because I can barely get up and work and do whatever, because we were back and forth to hospitals and hospice and this, and it was all starting to, it turned, and it was the worst, most panicky, scary, sad, painstaking thing I've ever experienced, and I hope I never. But when I talked to you, because I think I was driving back from somewhere and we talked on the phone, and
Mhm.
I just was like, I felt so peaceful because I was like, this person is going through the same thing and we're sober and we're trying to do it without any anesthesia. And like, there aren't a lot of people who understand. And, not to speak for you, but like, I know that you and your mom had, sometimes a complicated relationship. I had a very complicated relationship with my dad, which makes it very confusing. And in that process, and since he died, my whole entire childhood has been laid out on a table in front of me. And things that I thought I dealt with in therapy years ago are now front and center again. And it's not going
Yeah.
to make me drink, and it's not going to ruin my life, but it is going to hurt. Like,
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I mean, even just like with the diagnosis, I think I
yeah,
told you, like my brain and my heart were like split in two because on the one hand, I was like, oh my gosh, like, whatever resentments I had, like those are out the window. I just want my mom to be okay.
yes,
Like, I just, please let her be okay. And then on the other side, I was like, hey, like if one of the main things of this is alcohol, like I've always had this underlying resentment of my mom's alcohol use, even since I was a little kid, because I saw what it did to her and I saw
mhm,
how it changed her. I saw how it changed her behavior with me. I saw how it changed her behavior with my dad. And there were a lot of scary moments for a kid
yeah,
seeing that, and I don't ever think she realized like that it was like that bad. I mean, we don't, when we're in
no,
it,
you
we don't
don't,
like just telling you, like when I stay up with my friends now, I'm like, oh shit, like I really had a problem. We don't realize it when we're in it. It takes time and space and um interacting with other people who have the same issues, and reading, and all the things that we get to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
as workers of the program. um but yeah, like I was like so fucking pissed, and I was like, see, I told you. Like, why couldn't you just like, why couldn't you give it up? Like, why were you always like so, like, why were you always too proud to take a suggestion that maybe you should do this, or maybe, hey, not even maybe you should, but it was like, hey, do you want to come with me? Like, just so you could see what it is and like what I'm involved in. And it was always like, no, no, no. And that was for everything. Like, if somebody else suggested it to my mom, or recommended, or like whatever, invited, it was a big fat no, because in her mind, you were trying to control her,
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, like, all of those things, like, sometimes I'm just like here in the house, like doing something, and like this memory will pop up, like, well, remember when your mom did this, And it's like, of course, I would give anything to have my mom here today. But
Yeah.
it's just like you said, like, your entire childhood is laid out in front of you, and you're like, oh shit, well, I forgot about that. But I guess here we are again. And there have been moments where uh yeah, like, it's weird, because I remember my therapist said, like, when I was talking about how my dad was behaving while my mom was still sick, and how I was just here with my mom, and like, my mom was everything, and all I want to do is take care of her, and be there for her. And I was. But then my dad was over here doing his thing that was bothering me, because he wasn't present at all, And then after, he was just like, his solution was to not think about it, And I'm like, what? Like, I need you to just, can you just be a little human right now? Like, I can't right now. And, can you show some emotion? Like, are you there? Like, please tell me you're not dead inside, is kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
And so my therapist was like, well, like, you spent all of these years resenting your mom, that like, you didn't have time to resent your dad. And now that your mom is sort of like removed from the equation, now all of these resentments towards your dad can pop up. And it's like, yeah, since my mom's passing, like, I've never had more resentments towards my dad than I do now. Like, in my eyes and in my heart and in my mind, like, my dad could do no wrong, Like, I mean,
Right.
he was like more easily forgiven than my mom was, but um, because those resentments were like multi-level, like, let's take alcohol out of the equation. Let's take this, or let's take, go to therapy or something,
Right. Right.
And I seem to have all the answers, and it's like, no, I don't have, like, I'm no one, like, to say this is what you should or shouldn't do. Um, and so, like, all of these thoughts have been like swirling around in my head, and I feel grateful for the program and
Yeah.
everything that I've learned thus far from other people in the program. Um, because at least it gives me a little bit of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I can't, like, have these arrogant thoughts, or arrogant suggest unsolicited, give unsolicited advice or suggestions to people. Doesn't mean like that might not happen, but it certainly does at least give me self-awareness, like, oh shoot, like, let me pause. Like, maybe I need to apologize to them because they didn't ask for that. Or, you know what? Like, just because this is the answer for you doesn't mean it's going to be the answer for them. And you can't do that.
Right.
It comes back to that issue of control and
And expectations and matching.
expectation.
matching calamity with serenity is in direct proportion to how well we're managing expectations. But like also for me, when you're talking about your parents, it's like you come from this example of not feeling, right? She drank, he avoids. And, and so, and me too. I look at my pop's patterns and I look at my mom's patterns. I look at our familial patterns in terms of how we deal with emotion, and we don't. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we deal with emotions. We fucking don't do it. And when we start working a program, we get lucky because we have all these new tools and we have this program and this fellowship, and we feel really lucky. And then I start assuming, well, you guys all need to do what I did so that y'all can be healthy like me.
That's totally what I do.
And I hear myself doing it in my head sometimes. I used to say it out loud and now I don't. I'll still think it sometimes, but I'm like, that's not they're not working a program. It's your program, like mind your own business, like whatever. But also you've got to have boundaries in place to protect from that. Because if I am trying to be healthier and my reactions and other people are staying where they are, it's their choice to stay where they are. But like, I need to be really careful but otherwise it's just like I'm a big ball of resentment. But I look back at, my pop, and even at the very end, and he was just so stoic, and it's like it all came full circle of like, this is where I learned all this from, and you getting to kind of watch your dad he's just going to move on to avoid or to numb, which is kind of, what we all do. It just looks different on other people, right? Other people pick other stuff and we're like, how dare you? But then really it's no different than what we did. It's just manifesting in a person for him, and so I don't know. It's like 552 or that whole thing of like, it's hard. At the end of the day, I just want everyone to do things the way I do so that I can be comfortable.
Exactly. That's what I want. Like, yeah, like, and it's like what the big book says at the beginning, if everyone just did things my way, like everyone would be happy. Everyone would be like, their house would be in order, figuratively and literally. Like,
yeah.
Why don't they get it? That I have all the answers. And that is, that's like a big point in, in a lot of my social relationships where I'm like, hey, like, because I do recognize myself in several people that I still hang out with, maybe you want to try this, like, or I mean, I really, and I think that there's some kind of like weird connection because I see so much of myself in them, but I'm living it from the other side now. And I so want them to have what I have, or what, I want them to unlock the secret that I unlocked because their life will be 100% better.
Yeah.
Even if it's still shitty, like I'm not saying that like a better life means, everything's awesome and like no problems. Like our problems don't go away just because we stop drinking. Those are still there. And they're deep, but it's not as hard to deal with them.
Yeah.
As if, throwing gasoline on a fire, like it's just, that's literally like what we were doing. So anyway, I when I start doing that a lot, like I get really embarrassed because I'm like, oh shoot, like, hey, just shut up, Monica. Like nobody wants to hear it. Nobody asked you. Like just live and let live, right? Yeah.
It's also like that. You spot it, you got it. Sometimes of like you're picking up on all these things in other people, and sometimes it's something that maybe I need to look at inside myself. But it's easier to look at it in other people than it is to deal with what's going on with me. But also, somebody reminded me of this like analogy of that parable of some guys was seeing a caterpillar struggle to get out of the cocoon. And so he snips it with scissors to help it out, and then it died, its wings atrophied. And they're in the cocoon for so long, struggling, and they're building their strength and their wings so that when they do emerge naturally after a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of goop and messy shit that goes on inside the cocoon, they're able to fly and they have strong wings and everything. If somebody comes and helps, so if you step in and help someone,
Mm-hmm.
it's not their journey. They're on their journey for a reason. They're struggling for a reason. They're making bad decisions for a reason because for whatever reason, that's their thing. And like when they're ready, and I have to remember that too. I want to swoop in and save people. Like you even have the
Me
ability.
too. I want to save all the people. Well, not all the people, but most people and all the dogs.
Yeah, and when people would try to come and help me or save me when I was in the shit, like I wasn't ready and I needed to go through what I needed to go through until I was ready. And that's it. And like I need to remember, but people trust me, I have people remind me all the time, like, you're putting more work into that girl's program than she is. She's not ready. You need to let her go. And I'm like, no, but I guess that's the thing is just it's so hard, especially when we're in recovery because we do have the awareness. We know we can't pretend we don't know. Like we know, we see it. I know when I'm doing it. And so I guess I want to end on a positive note
Mm-hmm.
because you shared so many things and it's just so similar and it's honest. And that's what I always loved about your shares was that you were always honest. You never came in and pretended like everything was perfect, but you were still grateful. Even when you were going through hard stuff, you were still grateful. So there was that the realness. And I used to hate it when people would act like it's just such a cakewalk once you get sober because that, not only are your problems still there, it's actually a little bit harder because you can't numb and you can't run away now. You're actually going to have
Yes.
to feel it all. But you were always so honest about everything and you never tried to act like you had it all together. You showed up as yourself, whatever that was going on that day with you. And to me, that's what we all need to be doing. But I guess I want to hear what gives you hope because it sounds like you're kind of coming out of like, a dark place. Me too. And I went through some moments in the past year, past few months, on and off, where I really didn't have any hope. And my old nihilist, what's the point? Just a lot of that old stuff started permeating, and I got kind of scared because I was like, I don't want to live with this old brain. Um, but what gives you hope, as you're coming out of this kind of dark place with a succession of bullshit events, you know?
Yeah. I think what keeps my hope alive is that I've been through hard things and I've always come out on the other end. And so even when I'm like in the midst of like the most, I mean, just like walking in, you know, 3 inches of shit, like I know that I'm not always going to be walking here,
Right.
right? If I keep walking, I'm going to eventually step on grass or I'm going to eventually step on concrete, like something else. Like something is going to change because that's what that's what life is. Everything is temporary, And I learned that a long time ago. And I don't know, like I've just never forgotten it, like I've been through bad breakups and and I've been through moving and not having any friends and feeling very vulnerable throughout my life and just being on my own as an only child and leaving my parents' house and not knowing what life was going to be like after that and taking a risk by accepting this job or going here or there or whatever, like, and all of those moments have had their hardships, right? Like, and some uglier than others. And of course, losing my mom now, right? And I remember I used to imagine, like, oh my gosh, like if my parent, when my parents pass away, and this is like when I was still drinking, like I'm just gonna be a fucking mess. I'm just gonna be wasted, and I'm gonna, like maybe I'll just like drink myself away after I lose my parents. Like I felt like I wasn't going to be able to handle it. And I even remember saying when I was in high school, like, I hope I die before my parents because I'm not going to be able to like handle like their loss. And somebody said, like, I said that out loud, and somebody was like, well, what about your parents? They're going to be so sad without you, And, and everyone else. And I was just like, no, like I just never imagined like that I would be able to handle a loss like that. Yeah. Because as complicated as my relationship is with both my parents, like we've always been very close to each other, and probably slightly codependent, like I don't know, but but like going through this, and yeah, there are times where just out of nowhere, I'll remember something and I just start crying, and I start talking to my mom. I'm like, hey, Ma, like, how are you doing? And I know she's around, she's here. And, but as hard as that was, having to say goodbye to my mom and being there, with her, holding her hand until her last breath, and, just everything that came after that, like, I don't know, like, I feel like it can't get much lower than that, but here I am. I'm talking to you today, and, I'm slowly but surely, making, making moves in my life, and, always with the intent to, be at peace with myself first, yeah. And then hope that, if she's looking down on me, like, and proud of what I'm doing, like, great, like, but the thing is that, yeah, like how I felt on December 3rd and how I felt on December 23rd and how I felt on February 3rd or whatever, like all of those feelings, like, have changed into something else, right? And so, like, that's really what keeps me hopeful, that nothing, I mean, unfortunately, the good isn't always going to be good, but the bad isn't always going to be bad either. Right. Yeah. If we just remember that, especially, like, I mean, even when I have my head in my hands and I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, like, it's only temporary, it's only temporary, it's only temporary, And you told me something, it's already okay. And I actually got that tattooed on my arm.
Oh my God.
Because I remembered that. I was like, my friend Amanda told me this, like, it's already okay. It is already okay. And when I feel hopeless, I remember that it's already okay.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
But that's how I do too, is just, give it some time, because how you feel today is going to change and be different. And like, whether it's in an alternative parallel universe or it's in some other, whatever it is, it's already okay somewhere else in the future. Like, this isn't going to be as big a deal as it is right now. And like, your grief is going to turn into gratitude. Or for me, when I don't want to cry, but when, I was in the room when he died, and I remember having this moment of like, how stupid things are that we worry about. Like, watching someone leave the earth, it's like, God, the shit that I let get to me on a daily basis that have literally no significance whatsoever. That's such a grand scale to watch someone's life end, someone that you love. It really, really reset my perspective.
Oh, totally. And I mean, we can take that as like a gift, right? Yeah. Because not everyone knows that right now, but we know that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like how stupid so many things, or how trivial so many things are in life. And yeah.
And even our differences that my differences that I had with my pop, or like issues that we had in our relationship and all that, and having resentment with him for a lot of my younger years. But then later, as I was an adult and a parent and all these things, understanding, like, none of that ever came from a place of malice. He just had maladaptive coping skills. And I know it's cliche, like, oh, they did the best they could with what they had, but like, it's true. And the compassion and the tenderness that you feel, and you feel all that resentment melt away, and when old memories come up. But like, the times we didn't speak to each other, or we're both so damn stubborn that that was wasted time that I wish I could get back now. And so now, if I'm in a beef with somebody that I love, I remember that. I'm like, don't do that. Don't let your ego steal this time
Mm-hmm.
from you, right? And so I hope I can continue to integrate that lesson. We'll see. I mean, my ego is pretty.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've discovered that I'm more ego than I would like to admit. Like, hey, like I need to tone it down, like, and even if I don't like outright express, certain things, but I'm like, yeah, like, no, I've got a healthy ego, maybe too healthy. And, like, maybe it's time for me to do some work to cut myself down to size, because, yeah, I don't want to be that guy, like, I don't want to be that guy that doesn't show up, or that isn't like available for other people, and to be of service, to be of use in the world, right? Um, and nursing my self pity isn't going to do anyone any good.
No.
I mean,
And
starting
it's
with
like,
myself.
would you rather be right, or would you rather be happy? We hear that a lot in the rooms, and I'm always like, no, obviously. But if I have to choose, right, there's maturity, this humility that you, I guess, get over time, is just like, you know, even with my brothers or my mom or whoever, my daughter, it's not worth the beef, whatever it is. Even if I think
Exactly.
I'm right, it doesn't. What matters is that this relationship stays intact, and that I keep my side of the street clean. If I owe an apology, I make it. And what they choose to do with it is not up to me. Because when I'm on my deathbed, or when I'm with my mom as she's transitioning or whatever, I don't want to have those feelings of regret like I did with my dad.
Yeah.
So, like, I hope I can stay true to that. And like you said, just be useful while I still can, and try to break cycles, try to break the cycle in our family of like refusing to deal with emotion.
Yes.
That's it,
Totally.
which is hard. It's hard to do.
Totally.
It's so much more comfortable to just like not deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
we know where that
Eventually, it's going to catch up with you with whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever you're using to avoid like the issue, it will catch up with you, and I mean that instant gratification or instant comfort or whatever, is going to be short lived. And it's only a matter of time before like that runs out, before that keeps working,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, like you said, I should have done this ages ago, but
Yeah. But it's scary. It's scary, and we get to be afraid, and we get to, and that's the cool thing about, I think, the program, or having somebody you can call and bounce stuff off of, is just like,
Mhm.
yes, this is scary, but you're not alone. Here are some people who've
Mhm.
successfully made that transition, and I'll be right here with you when you're doing it. And if you fail, then like, so what? We'll just try again. It's not the end of the
Yeah,
world.
totally.
Well, I cannot thank you
Yeah.
enough for your time and sharing your heart and your story. I know it's not easy to talk about, so thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. And this was a really great experience to just get to talk to you, and share our ideas around so many different topics. And like my Friday is off to a great start. So thank you.
That's early in California, earlier than it is here. Well, I I really miss seeing you, and I'm just so
Likewise.
proud. I'm so proud of you, and so happy for you,
Likewise.
inspired by you, and all of those things.
Likewise. Likewise. You're my OGAA celebrity.
Oh.
Forever. Forever.